chapters 10 and 11 in the book for you right now. And we're in part 3, which says, even though it's backwards for you, Spring 1687, Guadalupe. Chapter 10. When the ship reached port on the island of Guadalupe, the sailors led the slaves up on deck. The sounds of their clinking chains preceded them. Gabriel and the sailors stripped the Senegambians. Then they washed and dressed them in new clothes. I did not see Senyabo, Seynabou is the little girl's name, until it was time to leave the ship, and she was let off with a rope. She wore a dress several sizes too big and had a white kerchief on her head. Her wooden doll still wore a dirty piece of indigo cloth. She gave me a look filled with fear. Now was the moment to do something, but what? It was a most horrible feeling to watch her disappear into a mass of other Africans. Gabriel came out of the crowd walking toward me with big steps. We made it, he said with a grin. You made it just fine, I thought, but what about the slaves and the sailor who died? What about me and my shriveled leg? You'll be returning to France, Gabriel? Asked Papa. Yes, in a few days. Papa told him our plans. The captain had given Papa the name of a plantation owner, a Huguenot. The man had an infirmary on his plantation where I'd be taken. La, how I despise the idea. Aren't you going to say goodbye to me, Daniel? Au revoir, Gabriel. I said, I will remember that you saved my family. You made the journey better for me, Gabriel said. I'll miss you. Thank you and good luck. Gabriel had... Arabelle! Oh, sorry, it's my dog being... Gabriel had treated me well. He was not a cruel person. He seemed good. Then why was he so indifferent toward the slaves? Papa carried me off the ship. We followed a wide street parallel to the shore toward a cluster of shops and large pink buildings. When Papa could no longer carry me, I walked with a stick. I soon grew tired and could not keep myself from falling. Papa left me and Mama to rest under a shade of a tree near a great lawn while he walked into a town to find a mule and a buggy. The first mate, a few sailors, and a parade of chained slaves marched past us. They filed across the park toward a cluster of well-dressed gentlemen in tall hats and lace collars. The African woman walked in one short line and the African men in a longer one. They were arranged from shortest to tallest. It wasn't hard to find Seynabou because she was the smallest in line. She held Mariama's hand. Hey, Abigail! Abigail! Where are they going? I pulled myself up and clutched my walking stick. Daniel, this isn't our business. Stay back, Mama said. The slaves are going to be sold, aren't they? I'm having a problem right here, guys. My dog sees me out the window and is causing a problem. So give me 1 second so I can try to move the dog. Hold on. Can you please go get Arabelle? I'm trying to record this video. She jumped over a big can in order to get there. Okay. Daniel, this isn't our business. Stay back, Mama said. The slaves are going to be sold, aren't they? Yes, I believe so. The sailors released the slaves from their chains. A heavy man wearing a shirt with a double-pointed collar paraded the slaves about. Walking behind them with a long whip, he made them walk fast in a circle, stop, run, then stop again. The Africans cried out as their future buyers swooped down and descended upon them. Seynabou screamed as the heavy man with the collar grabbed her and carried her away from Mariama. Mariama wailed pitifully. Wanting to get a closer look at what was happening, I limped toward the Africans. My mother called me. The heavy man made Seynabou open her mouth and show her teeth as if he was inspecting a horse. Seynabou cried loudly as a man squeezed her arms and felt her hands. I moved a little closer toward them. The man in the lace collar yelled at me in French. Go away from here, boy. Mind your place. I could see that his 2 front teeth were broken. I told you to leave, the man thundered. He smacked me on the jaw and I fell over. I picked myself up and wiped blood from my mouth with the cuff of my raggedy shirt. Seynabou's gaze met my own. Her eyes grew wider and sadder than ever. A gray-haired woman wearing a dress with puffed sleeves and decorated with ribbons came up to Seynabou. The child was made to turn around 3 times. The woman spoke French to the man with the broken teeth. Africans from the boat generally aren't any good, but she's young enough that she can be trained. The heavy man nodded and twirled his whip. Not many little girls survived the voyage, and she could grow up to be pretty. I might be able to sell her for a fair price. Just then Mariama, being led off by a young man with a top hat, lunged towards Seynabou. Seynabou, she screamed. Breaking loose from her captor, she caught Seynabou in her arms. This is awful. Seynabou clung to Mariama, burying her head against her shoulder. When the young man with the top hat tried to separate them, Seynabou cried like a baby. Mariama gazed imploringly at her new owner. Perhaps I should buy this girl too, Mariama's owner said to the man with the broken teeth. My new slave woman is obviously attached to her. No, said the gray-haired woman. We have plans for her. She's not for sale. The man in the top hat watched the other coolly. He considered for a moment, then said, Sell her to me. It's no good to separate them. You won't get much work out of this little girl if she's unhappy. Sinyabu cried out loudly, drawing her breath in gasps. Lord, don't let them be separated, I prayed. The two men spoke in hushed voices together, appearing to disagree. The heavy man with the double-pointed collar lashed his whip at Mariama, then pulled her away from little Sinyabu. My throat felt dry and sour. I wished my father would come. A hubbub rose among the men. The girl is not for sale, and that's my final word, said the man with the double-pointed collar. With a regretful expression, the man in the top hat led Mariama away. Tears ran down her face. Sinyabu cried uncontrollably, and I pressed forward to Sinyabu's side. She stared at me helplessly, her eyes red-rimmed. The man with the double-pointed collar pressed his mouth together in a smug expression. By the time Papa arrived, Mariama was gone. Daniel, you should not have strayed from your mother, Papa said sternly. We have the buggy. We are ready to go. Your mother is waiting. You have to buy Sinyabu. You can't let her go off with those people. I'm sorry, Daniel. There's nothing I can do. I raised my hands in farewell as the man with the collar dragged Sinyabu away with her neck in a rope. He brought her to a group of 10 adult male slaves. As owners walked away with their slaves, the crowd dispersed. I tried not to cry as I followed Papa toward the buggy and the shore. Why do you care about that little African girl? Papa asked. Why doesn't anyone else care? I said. The buggy waited near the wharves. I squinted in the bright sunlight as I looked around at the colorful ships in the blue-green water. We climbed in. In another few minutes, the buggy driver was off. Welcome to the island of Guadalupe. This is the town of Basse Terre, said the buggy driver. And actually, I should show you because in the front of the book, I believe there was a map. Yeah, so, so Guadalupe is actually, it's going to be hard for you to see, but if you can look here, it's sort of below Florida, like out there in the middle of the ocean. So it's an island like below the West Indies, Jamaica. It's over there, okay? And now I lost my page. I'm just having a rough time today, guys. Welcome to the island of Guadalupe. This is the town of Basse Terre, said the buggy driver in perfect French. He was a young man with a thick black mustache, a wide grin, and a broad-rimmed straw hat. He was neither dark-skinned nor fair-skinned, but something in between. The mule and buggy bounced along on the red dirt road. It passed through a town of pink houses with red-tiled roofs nestled around the harbor. We passed a white church. Tall green mountains loomed above me, making a bold outline against the blue sky. How could there be such beautiful and terrible sights in the same day? Mama smiled faintly. It is hard to believe we are still in a French colony. The road wound past swampy ground and opened to clusters of trees and rolling fields. I breathed in a sweet, smoky odor. What's that smell? I asked. It's burning cane. Lee Conte's sugar plantation is just ahead. On either side of the road now, green sugar cane plants, taller than my father, rose out of the soil and rippled in the wind. Groups of slaves dressed in light blue shirts and pants burned the leaves. Others slashed at the scorched plants with curved knives. Behind each work gang were men carrying whips. The buggy driver pointed to a series of low, tiled-roofed buildings. There's the sugar mill, he said, waving his free hand. That's where sugar cane is crushed between rollers. There's the boiling house where the juice from the cane plants is boiled, and the curing house where the sugar is made. The smell was strong and sweet. A dark-skinned woman passed by carrying a basket on her head. I hoped Sinyabu would do labor that looked as easy. Small, square, whitewashed cabins surrounded the sugar mill. Beyond the cabins was a grove of trees, their branches weighed down with oranges. The buggy continued up a hill to a grand 2-story brick house fronted by white columns. 4 chimneys rose from the shingled roof. A wide veranda wound around the house. In front, water burst into the air from a marble fountain. All around the fountain, flowers bloomed in beds shaped like crescents and stars. Oh, thank the Lord, praise be to God, Mama said. I began to feel better, too. The big house seemed so familiar. We're here, said the carriage driver. A small dark face peeked through a lace curtain in a large pane window. Out rushed a group of children, some light-skinned and some dark. They talked excitedly to one another, then ran back into the house, slamming the big door behind them. Soon a large round man dressed in light blue satin waistcoat and breeches appeared. The man's wig looked hot and heavy, full of curly white ringlets, which were draped around about his round, double-chinned face. He waddled toward the buggy on his short legs, which ended in narrow-heeled shoes. The man was so ridiculous I wanted to laugh. The last time I'd seen a wig like that was when Papa had delivered cloth to the home of a French nobleman. Bonjour, said the man. Hello, my friends. I'm Monsieur Guillaume Lacante. Chapter 11. Welcome to my home, he said. He led us to a rest near a fireplace. Madame Lecante, a very plump lady wearing many ruffles, sat on a pink sofa with a gray poodle on her lap. I took a seat beside her. I thought of my own pointy-eared Roy. I scratched the dog's head and stroked its warm, furry body. Madame Lecante smiled at me, her eyes sharp and blue, peering out from a lace-rimmed bonnet. She placed the poodle in my arms and stood to greet her guests. Mamma wiped a smear of dirt off my face. She tried to smooth the wrinkles in her soiled dress. Well, well, Madame Lecante said. I have not yet heard your story, but I can well guess it. I will have hot baths prepared for you. A bath. I hardly knew what it was to be clean anymore. Oui, agreed Monsieur Lecante. Monsieur is the husband and Madame is the wife. I'm not doing my French very well, but we will find you some clean clothes. For dinner we shall have snails and butter. I keep to French traditions. My father's father came here from Rouen after the massacre at St. Bartholomew. Many of us on the island left France because of one religious war or another. From a nearby stairway, more people came. A man, a woman, a boy about my age, and two younger girls with blonde red hair. Ah, here are the Allairs, said Monsieur Lecante. They are Huguenot refugees, like yourself. More introductions followed. The boy's name was Pierre Allaire. He had clear blue eyes set wide apart, dark blonde hair, and was a few inches taller than I. He wore farmer's clothes, breeches of a rough wool, and wooden shoes. I liked him immediately. Pierre joined me on the couch. Did your family flee from the dragoons? Yes, I said. And you? They burned our farmhouse, Pierre explained. Pierre explained that his family used to live just outside La Rochelle. They'd escaped to Guadeloupe on a cargo ship. Papa told the group about us traveling on the Lily. Madame Lecante let out an ooh la la, which made the Pierre's sisters laugh. Pierre nudged me. See that? He said in a low voice. A picture of the king in the fire. The iron gate holding the logs in the fire had a decorative panel with a portrait of Louis XIV, King of France, and his emblem of the sun. We're studying the history of this, and we just studied Louis the 14th and the sun in our history class that goes along with this. Monsieur Lecante cleared his throat. Speak up, boys. I'm glad you've noticed my grate. So on the fireplace, he has King Louis XIV's picture, and they're burning him. I had it made according to my own design. While I warm myself on brisk, foggy mornings, I reflect on our dear Sun King and see his villainous royal head surrounded by flames. So they don't have to stay loyal to the king there. Monsieur Lecante, Papa said, I was told you have an infirmary. My son's leg was injured on our journey. Certainly, replied Monsieur Lecante. I'll have my people take a look at him. Thank you, sir, I said, though I dreaded the idea of being examined. My parents and I left the others to have our baths. After soaking in the warm bath water, my skin felt clean at last. Then, taking a short carriage ride, Papa and I arrived at the infirmary, one of the low plaster houses near the sugar buildings. There, African men and boys lay in rows of 12 beds. Monsieur Renard, a dark-skinned man with white hair and a mustache, instructed an African woman to rub a thick yellow salve into long red marks on a man's back. Other slaves, too, were lying down on their stomachs and being treated for the same condition. They'd been whipped. Monsieur Renard gestured to me, find a spare bed and sit. I took a bed alongside an African boy about my own age and size who was chewing the stalk of a plant. His skin was very black and his thick hair fanned out from underneath a cap. Unlike the other Africans who wore loose-fitting blue garments, this boy was dressed in a white shirt and tan breeches that tied at the knee. I wondered if all the dark-skinned people in the room were slaves, or if perhaps some of them were servants like my family had back in France. My name's Josias, said the boy in French. His eyes held a mischievous expression. I'm Daniel Bonnet, I replied. My parents and I are guests of the Lecontes. I see, Josias nodded. His eyes always seemed to be moving. The African woman put a plaster on Josiah's red, swollen hands. You again. What have you gone and done now? I burned my hands making sugar roses, he said, for Monsieur Lecante's rum cake. A smoky smell filtered through the open windows. The mill grinds endlessly this time of year, Monsieur Renard complained. And the slave masters are using their whips all the time, too, the African woman muttered. Monsieur Renard rolled up the baggy sailor pants I now wore. Soon he was flexing and poking my leg. I felt nothing at all below the knee. The leg looked like a stick, thin and straight as a table leg, with 3 long red knobby scars. When Monsieur Renard touched the tender part around my knee, where I'd fallen many times, I clutched the rail of the bed. Monsieur Renard motioned the African woman to put a salve on the hurt part. Here, said Josias, breaking off a piece of his green plant. Sugar cane. Chew on it. The cane was sweet and sticky. Thank you, I said. You are fortunate your leg Wasn't amputated, said Monsieur Renard, but I'm afraid you'll never get your feeling back. The answer was as I expected. Josias watched us, still chewing his cane. I'll measure you for your crutch, Monsieur Renard said. It will support you, and with a raised shoe you'll be able to walk much better. You'll see. Will I be able to run? With a crutch? You can try. The salve tingled. It smelled nasty, like something pickled. Josias left the infirmary. Meanwhile, an African man accompanied by a white man limped into the infirmary. He was from the Lily. Our eyes met. I felt sure the man remembered me as well. When Monsieur Renard came back inside, the salve master said, a new man, stepped on a nail before we could get him into the fields for his first day. I watched as the doctor made a cut in the man's foot and drained it as the African woman applied the yellow salve. The slave master led the new slave away. If one slave from the ship ended up on this plantation, there were probably others, maybe even Senyabu. Beds filled as fast as they emptied, and finally, a few hours later, feeling like a new person with my crutch and raised shoe, I stood on the path outside the infirmary. I took a tentative step on my good foot. I wobbled and fell. Papa rushed to my side. Please, Papa, I said, I will do it. I pulled myself up, and I took another step and fell again, and after a few more attempts, I caught my breath. One of Monsieur Leconte's slaves took us by carriage back to the Leconte's house. As we approached the front door, Pierre called, Daniel, you're back. He introduced a boy with fair hair and a wide grin. This is my friend Elie de Bonrepos. His family came from France too, but he lived on Guadalupe for a long time. Hello, bonjour, Elie said. Papa lifted me out of the carriage, and I took a few clumsy steps and fell down. Turning away from Pierre, I went into the house. Until I could walk better, I didn't want the boys to see me. The next day I found a place to practice walking, a flat piece of land near the huts where the domestic slaves lived. Josias came out from a grove of trees carrying a basket of oranges. I approached him. You're making progress, he said with a wily grin. I smiled. Remember, Josias was the little African boy that was there with his hands that were burned. I smiled, then hobbled across the small garden, returned and swung myself down onto a log. Josias sat beside me. How are your hands, Josias? Better. He unwrapped a bandage and showed one of his reddened palms. After we'd each had an orange, I followed Josias into a small house nearby. A slender, dark-skinned woman stood near a fireplace, spooning hot cereal into a bowl. She gave me a questioning look. Mama, this is Daniel, Josias said. She nodded. Pleased to meet you. I'm Josias's mother, Charlotte. Josias talked to his mother in a language I did not understand. I see. You're a visitor, she said. Yes. I wondered what name to call her. She hadn't given me a last name. To me, she became Madame Charlotte. Madame Charlotte put her bowl of cereal on the table, then inspected Josias's hands. In French, she explained that she only had a short break while her mistress, Madame Leconte, was napping. She and Josias must return to the big house in a few minutes. Josias dished himself some of the mush and joined his mother. I seated myself on the only other chair in the room. In one corner lay a large drum made out of a log and covered with skin. The 3 beds were nothing more than boards covered with thin mats. I smiled when I saw an indigo-woven blanket. That cloth, it's from Senegambia. Yes, Madame Charlotte replied. When I explained about traveling on the Lily and going to the African market, her dark, almond-shaped eyes opened wide. My husband and I came from Senegambia. Josias was born here, she said. Did a new slave girl arrive yesterday, I ventured? She would have been about 5 years old. Josias moved his mouth silently. Not that I know of, Madame Charlotte asked. Why? I told Josias and his mother about Senyabu, the heavy man with the broken teeth, and seeing the slave from the Lily in the infirmary. If she's here at the house, I'll see her before the day is over, Madame Charlotte replied. But if she's one of the field slaves, it might take a while to find her. Josias made a grimace. I hope she didn't end up as a field slave. Would a little girl have to labor in the fields, I asked. No, but she might have to clean up after the mules or carry heavy water jugs to the slaves in the field. She'd live in a dirty, crowded shack. And Josias's cottage hardly seemed comfortable. My own home in France had been 5 times the size. Josias's eyes suddenly lit up. If the girl's one of the field slaves here, Daniel could ask Master Leconte to bring her to the big house. There's plenty of work a little good girl could do there. Watch what you say, Josias, Madame Charlotte warned. The master does as he pleases. There was silence. My father says Master Leconte is not as bad as some other slave owners he knows, Josias went on, even if he did sell my brother Jeremy to another plantation. Sell your brother? A sad look crossed Madame Charlotte's eyes. Josias went on. Jeremy wasn't afraid of Master Leconte. The master didn't like that. He got a lot of money for Jeremy because he could cook and play the violin. Madame Charlotte turned toward the open door. The sun's no longer overhead, Josias. Get back to the kitchen before you're missed. She grabbed my arm. You better not come here again. Josias might be punished for it. La, I wouldn't want that to happen. You can find me in the kitchen after breakfast tomorrow, Josias told me. Maybe by then I'll know more about Senyabu. Josias dashed off past the garden. How sad that his brother was no longer with him. Leaning on my crutch, I passed by the slaves' gardens and carefully tended that sat on a tree stump to rest. A shiny purple bird, no bigger than my thumb, sucked pollen from a red flower. It reminded me of a woven tapestry of birds hanging on the wall of my old home. I hoped someday Papa would teach me to weave such pictures. I got up and trod past the stables, curing houses, and chicken coops. The sun crept down behind the green mountains. Then suddenly there was a ferocious gust of wind, followed by rain. Making my way through the rain and mud, I managed to walk back to the LeConte's home, falling only twice. And that is the end of chapter 11. So that's 10 and 11.